Okay, awesome. So again, thanks for coming out. We usually start off these forums with ways to get help. OpenScholar has a community forum, which the development team receives any bug reports or feature requests. So you're certainly welcome to go there. And by the way, I'm going to post this presentation on the ABCD-OpenScholar website, so afterwards you can go to it and click on these links too. We have a documentation site that we're constantly updating as the platform changes and new features are released. We have a roadmap, and this gives you a glimpse into what's coming out with the platform. We have an iterative approach to releases. Every 3 weeks or so will be a new release, and some of it's bug fixing, but some of it's new features. Then we also have bi-weekly platform trainings. Bree has been the trainer, and Kate is actually going to take over and do the training in July, or even sooner than that. So be sure to check that out. You can go to the Harvard training portal and just query OpenScholar, and you'll find it. Okay, so let's dive right into content revision. So I'm going to go through some of these slides, and then I'm going to jump into sort of a live demo of content revision. So content revisions has been around for a while. We just didn't introduce it into OpenScholar until very recently. People have asked for this feature that if you save a page and then you go back and you edit it, is there a way to see the previous revision? Maybe there's something you've done by accident that you've overwritten, or maybe you just want to see a historical record. It doesn't have to be a page. It could be a news item, an event. So it's been around for a while, and anybody that has worked with other content management systems knows that it's a pretty common feature to have. And a little more as to why this feature would be useful. These are the things that we came up with. Maybe there's other reasons that you know. The first one is a fail-safe. Oops, I accidentally wiped out this entire page and hit save, and how do I get the old content back? Well, now you kind of have that fail-safe in case that ever happens. Workflow. Workflow is in reference to how do I, what is the publishing flow? How do I have others check the content before it gets published? And while this isn't really a fully fledged solution for that, this can be used for that, where you can have a couple of different versions, let's say, that are not published, and you can have people compare them. And I just want to put the caveat out there that this isn't fully developed as a workflow tool yet, but it could be used for that purpose, for sort of small scope things. And then changing content. Revising a page over time where you make small edits, just seeing what you've done and how that content has changed for a specific page are 3 potential use cases. And you might have more. So these are the ones that we came up with. All right, so those of you that are familiar with OpenScholar know that when you come to a page, you can edit the page. There's a little gear that gives you an edit option. And this will take you into the page content. Now, I'm using the word page, but the content revisions will be available for other kinds of content types, like your news items, blog posts, and we'll look at those types. And even if a type that you're working with is not doesn't have content revisions, it could be added in the future. So this is a work in progress. So you can get to the content revisions either by clicking on the large gear above the site title, or clicking on the gear in the body content. That will load up your content revisions access. And that's a change. And I'll actually show you that. And it's kind of a nice change when editing pages. It used to be separated, and I can show you that when we do a live demo. So where you see the content revisions interface, it'll be when you go to edit any kind of post, it'll be right on the right with all of your other metadata information like publishing options, the URL, and it'll be right there. And so by default, there's a little box that will be checked, and it will create a revision by default. You can turn it off so it doesn't create a revision, but by default it will be on. And then you can add notes. So, the example I'll give is, let's say you have a page that lists your really simple page that lists a bunch of projects that are happening, and you have an end date for each of these projects, and you want to revise it. Say you get more grant money, and that the project will go on for longer. Maybe you want to update that page and make a note that say, hey, I updated the end date for this particular project. So that's one use case for it. There was some debate. So should this be turned on by default, or should users have to select it? But we decided that people might forget and come back and expect there to be a revision. So we didn't want to avoid that. We wanted to avoid that, I should say. It said revision notes. They're just small notes that you can that describe what kind of change has been made. Can be useful when we see the whole list of revisions, which we'll see in a minute. And another part of this is when you're looking at the edit form for a page, it'll tell you how many revisions you have right here. And where that arrow is pointing, I don't know how, is this screen blurry or is it blurry from this angle?
It's too bright.
Too bright?
The contrast on the...
Yeah. Do you want me to, I don't know if this will help or make it worse, so let me know. Probably not, probably irrelevant. Okay. All right. And maybe I can go, tone it down. Oh, we'll deal with it. So that little arrow is pointing to, it tells you how many revisions you have. And it's actually a link that takes you to your revisions page for this particular research page. So another way to get to, a way to get to the revisions page. In the slide before, you can click on this little link here inside the edit form. But now you'll have a new option when you go to edit. If there are revisions, you'll have an option called revisions that'll be right in that edit drop-down. So that'll take you to your list of revisions for that page. So you'll see that. Okay, so this is what the revisions, it's really not a page, it's a screen that comes up over the existing page. It shows you your current revision. You can see there it puts the revision notes. The example I gave you was updating an end date for a project. And then it numbers them. It's kind of the order is by, number one is the first original post that you did. And number two is the second revision. And then the current revision, you could say number three, right? Because that's the third one that you saved. So kind of keeps that order. And so your options, you can view the post right from here. You can revert. So if I went over here, here's the revert button. If I wanted this version to appear, that would make that version live and make the current version. It would still live in my list of revisions, so I could come back to it later. So we'll do a live demo of that. Yeah, so the view option is really just so you can compare. You can do two. You can open two views and two different tabs and compare. Clicking the revert, like I said, will make that page live, and it'll actually make a copy. So you'll create essentially another revision. It'll say copy of that revision. And then delete is just pretty obvious. Just get rid of the revision altogether if you don't need it. Any questions so far about? Okay, additional info. So additional info screens are sometimes boring, but this is to me is the most interesting. Revisions are available for the following content types: page, blog, book, FAQ, link, news, profile, and publications. So if you have events, you won't be able to create revisions. That may change. If we receive feedback, say, hey, I would like to have revisions for events, maybe we'll add it. But those are the types that this is rolling out with. Revisions are turned on for each post. Again, it's just so we don't have a situation where someone thought they created a revision and it didn't get saved. You have a maximum of 10 per post. So if you've saved a page 10 times and then you save it on the 11th time, it'll overwrite the very first one that you did. It'll kind of keep cycling. So the very first one you did will be gone. Okay, so as a result of the revisions feature, you can now access the page meta information right from the page content widget, which is kind of cool. Kind of a big deal, but if you're really into OpenScholar, this is a kind of a thing that we've been asking for a while that makes sense. So wherever you edit a page, or either there's two places to edit, they're both going to look the same. So I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, so I guess that means I start doing the live example. Okay. I wrote this slide, so I should know. But all right, cool.
Do you give up the slide develop or after the session?
Absolutely, yes. So the slide's going to be available on ABCD-OpenScholar website. Yep. So we have a presentations page with all of our past presentations, so you'll be able to view it. Okay, so this page I haven't started fresh, but if I wanted to start fresh, let me just show you what that looked like. I'll come back to this. So I'll add a subpage, research, and I'll just say more research. Okay, so I'm originally creating a page, and as you see in my meta information, there's no revisions information because this is the first time I'm saving it. Okay, great. So I'm going to create. Let's go into my more. Okay. So even after I create my first version of this, I still don't get a revisions because there's only one version of it. But what the cool thing is, let's go in and edit this right now. When I go in now, I'll see that I have my notes. So adding more info. All right. Okay, so this is version 2. Now that I have 2 revisions of this page, I'll have the revisions option here. So when I was referring to being able to see the meta content from both this gear up here, so those of you not familiar with editing pages, there's 2 ways to do it. You can go up here and click edit, which I'll do. This used to be the only way to get to the meta information on the right. But now, you can do that up here. And if you decide to just edit the page content, you also get the meta information. And that just it makes things easier for content administrators. It's just similar user experience. Okay. So what happens now? I've created 2 versions of this. Now I have, apologize again for being blurry. This says there are currently 1 revision. So then we've got to fix that little bug, plural. So if I click on this, it'll show me my revisions screen. So what this says is this is my current version right here with my notes, and then the 1 means this is the first version that I created. I can view it. Oops, let me go back in here. Go back into revisions. So I can view the original. And this is a demo site. So, okay, when you view past revisions, it'll show up in what we call this a modal window, a window that comes up over the main screen. It shows you the first version, and now if you look underneath here, see I've added a little bit more content. I say, I don't like that second sentence. I'm going to revert it back to the original version. So I click revert, and it's going to make a copy of this. And it tells you right here, it's made a copy of the original version, from, it doesn't say original version, but it gives it a timestamp. That matches this timestamp. Still could be a little more user-friendly, right? But you get the general idea. So what I've done is I've restored this original version, essentially, and now that's live on the site. One thing it also tells you is tells you how many. So let's just go back in, hover over this, and there's a hidden gear. So it says 2 of 10. I need to confirm if it's not counting this as 1 out of the 10. Maybe it doesn't. So I'll confirm with development. But it tells you. The point is, it tells you how many you have right up here at the top. All right. Back to my research. This is the example that I showed you before, and so I'll go back into let me go into the edit screen and just show you I can get to the revisions from here as well. It takes me to the same place. But here are my revisions. Maybe next time we'll have to do something about the clarity on this. So it takes you to the same place. So the upshot is that you can get to that screen from 2 different places. Okay. That is content revisions. Any questions on that before we go? Sure. So it's slated for the May 1st release. We have a pretty heavy release coming up on Monday. So it's probably going to be out in between May 1st and next release. So maybe a week later, not sure. But it won't be Monday because we have a lot of other stuff going on with this particular release. So maybe by the middle of May, it should be available. Any other questions? Good, sure.
Is there any way to compare 2 revisions and see what's changed between how they
Yeah, so they don't have that capability quite yet. I think that would be quite interesting. Programmers sometimes use this program called diff, and it kind of highlights what's different. That'd be kind of cool. So we'll keep that in mind. Maybe we'll bring that up. I'll bring that up to the development team. Yeah. All right. So now I present Kate.
To a completely different topic. An important one nonetheless, though. So this obviously isn't a set of new features. I'm just kind of recapping some imagery and photography best practices because it's obviously a very important thing. People want image-heavy sites a lot these days. So yeah, I'm just going to go over some basic practices and then how that relates to OpenScholar. So OpenScholar has some built-in features to help you manipulate your images primarily with scaling and resizing the image. There's also some cropping features as well, depending on the content type. But before you even start uploading different imagery, there's some different best practices that you want to keep in mind before you do that. So we have our guideline site here. Actually, I already have this queued up. But basically, we want an overall, certain quality to our imagery. We're representing Harvard and everything. So we have our guideline site that has a little bit more information about that. I have some highlights here. So we want a high resolution for imagery, obviously. We want that pixelation. Choose color versus black and white, that sort of thing. Avoid borders, and that's more of a stylistic preference or standard at Harvard. And then photojournalistic in nature. We don't want them too staged or stocky feeling. And then, of course, reflect the diversity of the student body or the faculty, whoever your image subjects are. Attractive seasonal images. Do images with freshly fallen snow instead of dirty snow. Common sense things like this. And then there's also a little bit more information about composition, rule of thirds. There's some examples here, but don't center your images with the subject straight on. You want to maybe do the upper right-hand corner. It's just a little bit more interesting compositionally. There's some things about lighting, symmetry, depths of field as well. That's particularly good to keep in mind. You're going to take your own pictures for your website as well. So where to find images for your site? So we have Merlin, which I haven't explored too much myself. Pay attention to this link here because it's hard to find. It's kind of a weird link. It's not on harvard.edu domain. But it's basically a library of different images. You can filter by event, I believe. And those are for purchase, and you can order those on your own. It's a self-serve thing. iStockphoto.com is one example of the many stock photography sites that are available. If you do a quick Google search, you'll find a lot, and then we also have a list on our documentation site as well. I am most comfortable with Google as a whole, so I often use Google search, and there's a search tool where you can label it for reuse, and that is just to make sure you're not infringing on any licenses or anything like that. That's important to keep in mind. And if you don't want to worry about that at all, you can hire a photographer or take photographs by yourself. iPhone quality is getting pretty good these days, so that's definitely an option. Just keep in mind some of those principles that we talked about. Yep. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to do that. Yes, you can access any picture, on the web, but whether you're supposed to or not, it's a little iffy. Okay. Yeah, I mean, if it's on a Google image search, you're probably going to be able to grab that right off. So.
We kind of use Creative Commons images, which is licensing standard.
Yep.
And they have some rules around if you use one of those images, they're really meant for YouTube. They just have certain rules around giving credit to the
Yep. So Creative Commons definitely a standard to keep in mind when you're thinking about images. And you also want to get permission from your image subjects as well. Iconography, people love icons, but you don't want to overuse them. They can be really effective used sparingly, and I'll show you an example in a bit. We use Icon Finder to find icons. There are a lot of free ones and ones for purchase as well. And you can, filter by, flat or 3D. And you can type in, video icons, and I'll give you like a video camera. So when should you use icons? 3 things that I've listed here, things to keep in mind. They break up text on a page. It's going to provide better readability. So it really can separate out different ideas by using icons. Is the icon going to provide further clarity? Is that symbol there going to help the user know exactly what they're clicking on and what type of information they're going to get when they navigate there? Wayfinding, is the icon helping the user navigate, understanding where they are in the context of your site? And I'll show you an example at the Car Center. They have some good imagery overall as well, and they have a few sets of icons here. So this one is really breaking up the text nicely, and it provides navigation as well. This one here is just it's just breaking up the text, and you're going to get information on all 4 of these things. If you click Read More, it's pretty clear and clean, uses white space effectively. And then here is just a pretty simple navigation using some very clear icons as well. So choosing the correct image format, JPEG is what I prefer to use with photographs. It supports millions of colors, so that's always a safe bet. You can also use GIFs or GIFs as well, but I tend to default to those just for animations. They're really good with that. They also support transparency as well, but I think JPEGs come out looking a little bit better. PNGs are a newer format, and I use these a lot for icons and logos, things like that. They're great to work with in Photoshop or another image editor. So yeah, I use those for icons especially. It's always important to keep your image sizes in check. You really want to make sure that it's not over 200 or 300 kilobytes. And this ensures better performance overall, faster page load times. Photoshop Save for Web feature is a really easy way to save the photograph, to compress the image and also retain a certain amount of quality. And you always want to have that sort of balance there. You want the image to look nice, but it probably could be a little smaller and still look great on a page. If you don't have Photoshop, there's another very easy, no-frills, free browser editor called Pixlr, and you can choose to save it and compress it down a little bit, see how that looks and what the file size is. The overall file size limit on OpenScholar is 128 megabytes, although your images shouldn't be anywhere near that, but just to keep in mind. And if your images, if you want to think about it in terms of width or height, if it's over 2,400 pixels wide, OpenScholar might have trouble uploading that file. So it's another reason to compress. And another tip, always keep the original image. You don't want to compress an image and then recompress it because it's going to lose that data, that quality every single time. So you always want to go back to the original one. Making images accessible, it is very important, and there's obviously a lot more to say on the subject, so I have the accessibility site link there, but you really always want to add good alternative text to your images. It should be short, sweet, and clear. Think about it, if you were using a screen reader, what would be helpful versus confusing. And images should be used to support your content and enhance understanding versus defaulting or falling on the image to convey the entire content of the page. That's really going to be the opposite of accessible, and you certainly do not want to have a whole block of text as a graphic because someone who's using a screen reader is going to have a hard time digesting that content. So just as a recap, you add images through the media browser. You can drag and drop, upload files from your computer, embed from another source on the web, and then go through your previously uploaded files as well. So In OpenScholar, there are 3 different ways to resize an image. There's the border drag method. Just grab the corner of the image. I'm sure you've probably all done that before. You can also double click on the image itself or right click and hit image properties, and this nice dialog box will appear, and you can specify the exact width you'd like. Want to make sure that that little lock icon is locked, which it's not in that current image, because that will maintain the aspect ratio. So you want to keep the width and height ratio the same as you're resizing it. And the other thing you can do is go straight into the HTML source. You can find the width and height attributes and change according to there, but again, you just want to make sure the aspect ratio it stays the same. And I have a link to an aspect ratio tool there as well. Yeah, any questions so far? Yep. Yep.
I noticed that they don't look as sharp after I upload them on OpenScholar. So OpenScholar compress images further after I save for web. So it looks very clear in Illustrator. But
Yeah.
when I upload it, it wouldn't look the same.
Yeah, so OpenScholar, are these really large images?
No.
Hmm.
I know that sort of on the back end, it makes its own copies of the images that you upload into different kind of file size folders. So that could be contributing to some of the quality loss. I generally don't, I don't see that unless it's a large file. I see some of the large files. So what file type are you using?
I usually try both JPEG and PNG when I compare.
Okay.
Should I use the PNG? Would that be better?
Possibly, yeah. I'm not sure why we're using this.
I don't think that's the problem with photos. I noticed the more color graphics.
Okay.
Yeah. I would try it out with PNG. Yeah. For Illustrator, anything you do in Illustrator, I think, is probably going to work better with PNG. In my experience, it's going to be sharper. Yep.
I had that same problem.
Okay.
Product here before. But it was also made for, it was, I did do it with JPEG. They were actually expert in Photoshop, like they were forerunner, so, it definitely got fuzzier, on the, fuzzier.
Each time you save a JPEG,
PNG, no, I was.
Oh, PNG. Yeah, that's something that we should bring to development. There is a current issue in their queue about image quality loss with large images. So maybe we'll augment that to include all images. Look into that a little more.
Okay. Want to finish up these last?
Okay, yeah. All right, great. So we're almost through. So funny, we were talking about animated GIFs. I remember the 90s when you had a page full of them. Anybody remember that? Those websites? Anyhow. Oh, this is embarrassing. That's me. But anyhow, I just wanted to talk about cropping in OpenScholar. For certain content types like profiles, there is a crop tool, and one of them is profiles. So when you upload your picture for your people profile, you actually can move around this sort of crop area tool. It's set at a fixed shape, a fixed aspect ratio. So there's 2 different aspect ratios for people. When you are viewing the list view, there's a small square, 75 by 75 pixels. And then when you go and click into somebody's profile, it shows a taller image. It's a different aspect ratio. And what the list page does is it just kind of centers the picture in the very middle. So if you have somebody with a real tight headshot, you might notice in the list view, it kind of comes down a little bit, because that's what's happening instead of changing the shape. So leave a little bit of headroom when you're taking the, or if you have, most of you are not taking your own, but if you have pictures out there. And the problem I see is that not everybody has time to go around taking pictures of their faculty and staff. So you kind of have one that's zoomed out, one that's tiny, one that's huge. So anyhow, the slideshow also allows you to crop, which is nice. We have two sizes: the 3:1 ratio, which is the widescreen, and then the 16:9 ratio. These three over here are all the same ratio. It's just the text changes position. So you don't have to worry about cropping this yourself. That OpenScholar has a tool that will crop this for you. So, and we're almost through this. So news automatically crops your photos. It takes a center image, and it has a couple of different sizes. The 100 by 100 square, and then on the list view, and then a 180 by 180 pixel square on the detail view. But you can't choose, so it's just going to take what's in the very middle. So just be mindful of that. If you look at the original picture for this flower, this extends way out. Let me just go. I actually have this handy here. So this picture actually is not a square. It's wider than it is tall. So what OpenScholar is going to do is just take a square in the middle, and that's going to be your news, something like that, whatever the square dimension is. That's what it's going to use. So when I mentioned making a copy, that's kind of what it does. Maybe that's why it loses a little bit of quality. It kind of crops and makes its own copy. The original is still saved to the server, actually. It's just not used. And then the last thing, I thought I mentioned the media gallery is another place for images. Those of you who haven't used it, it's pretty nice. It's a pretty nice way to display a bunch of images, and it comes up in a modal window. So if you'd like to learn more, I just put a link at the bottom of this page. I won't go into it too much. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions for Kate?